Welcome to FM Corner. I'm Danny Koontz, your host, Director of Relationship Management for Windy City Equipment. We're doing part 2 today with Beau Massey. Beau's the president of Collier Restaurant Group, has restaurants in East Tennessee and also in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, managing 10 concepts, a campground, and billboards as well. So pretty varied. How's it going for you today, Beau?
It's going pretty good. A little congested sinus wise, but other than that, I can't complain. So I'm here.
Temporary on the DL list, but making it out to get it done.
That's right.
We're going to continue with questions. What do you look for a vendor that supports you at Collier Restaurant Group? What's important?
So I guess the first thing we look for, you're especially if it's a vendor you've not worked with before, you always got to take that initial chance. But first and foremost, you're looking for somebody, a vendor that has similar core values, that hopefully believes the same thing you believe, and has a similar purpose to what we have. And then after we start working with that vendor, you definitely have to evaluate that and see how you're lining up with them, and are they working with your best interest in mind as well as their own, and are we doing the same for them? And once you get to that point, it's evaluating, does this vendor have the ability to move from kind of a transactional partnership or relationship into a real relational partnership that you can have for a long time. So some of the key things you'll look for, first and foremost for me, it'll start with not integrity, but communication. Do they communicate well? And if they communicate well, are they doing what they're saying they're doing? Is the trust there? And then all of that boils down to integrity. Do they have integrity as a company? In the same way, are we displaying that integrity to them? And are we communicating well with them? And do they trust us? And so it really, we're looking for somebody we can develop a long-term relationship with. And that's the ultimate goal for all of our partners. And some you can, some you can't. And it's not always it doesn't mean they're a bad company. Sometimes they're a good company, but they may just not be a good fit for us. And then, of course, you've always got to look at competence. We've got several restaurants in the same kind of geographical region here. And can they handle all that we can throw at them? Because we're going to throw a lot at them every day. And so, we've got to evaluate those things. We typically try to look at, can they handle us on the front end? Because we can kind of tell how big they are, how big is their presence in our area. And if it's big enough, then you move on to, can we, are our core values even lining up? Do we, I guess, jive as partners? And then you move on from there.
Once you get a partner per se that you trust, haven't you found that there's a great ability to use their knowledge to actually help you, to look at something and you say, this is what I want to do. And they go, I wouldn't suggest that. Here's what I would suggest. Not that you automatically go to, well, they're going to make more money that way, that's why they're doing it. No, they're actually doing it because of a real reason. It's better, they've worked with it in the past or done something like that.
Yeah.
So they add value to you, and I know during the time that I spent working for you and so on, we were doing redos of Fridays, and a person like a Dan Bettis, who's gone now, but someone that comes in and looks and says, what about this or what about that? And it's not for more profit reason. It's been in the industry and built 1,000 restaurants. Here's some ideas and so on. And that just helps from those type of vendors.
Yeah. That's that competence piece. You definitely got to have, they can be the best people in the world, but if they don't know any more than you do about a situation, then there's really no point in having them in that situation. So yeah, I mean, that's huge. I mean, we've had a lot of scenarios where even, a company might be big enough to handle you. Let's say it's walk-in coolers or freezers, but they're coming out to work on them. And then the next day they're coming out to work on them. And the next day they've got the people to get there and get on it, but they're not competent in fixing something permanently. So you can find out real quick how competent they are. But yeah, like you said, Dan Bettis, that guy knew a lot. And those are getting harder and harder to find in our world is competent companies that have some of those experienced guys. I think every day, the entire trade world is, declining faster than it's gaining new people.
Sure.
So when you find somebody that knows what they're doing, if you can remotely link their values to yours, and you see the potential for a good partnership, you got to hang on to those as long as you can. But then I've also seen it the other way, where you do have a partnership, and maybe there's some on the other end, a company goes through some internal changes, and then the company changes, and their values may change, or the way they handle you may change, and then they used to be a really good partner looking out for your best interests and theirs, and then they go away from that. So you constantly have to evaluate it. You can't just do it. It's not a one-time thing. And so, yeah, that's huge, having that competence level.
Sure. And lots of times, and you mentioned this, but a company changes. Most of the time when a company changes, it's because of people changes.
That's right.
The ideas and the so on and so forth of what was built suddenly changes. And when that happens, the people that are left there, you're working under a different set of rules. And it's normally a people change is what causes companies to change a culture or change their values or whatever that may be, is because and it's typically leadership changes.
Yeah.
It's leadership changes at the top.
I've got a quote on my wall that basically says, you put a good person in a bad system, the system always wins. And that's typically, how you see it happen. Either the leadership changes or you've got older guys retiring, younger guys coming in. Generationally, people care about different things. And as a young, ambitious guy might be looking at how much money he can make versus the older guys like, I don't want to come back out and work on this job again tomorrow and the next day, so I'm going to try to fix it right. And then more times than not, it's just that experience piece. The older guys seen it before, and I'm not saying we've got a lot of good young techs now, but it's definitely something we watch a lot closer when we see a young tech come out, because they may just be right out of school, they know what they know, but they've not been through it, and so they may not have all the answers. So we definitely we value it when we get the older guy that's been in the industry a long time that's still wanting to make permanent fixes and looking out for your best interest. Doesn't mean the young guy's not. He just may not be capable.
Sure. Well, and an example of that could be and I'm on the service side now, so you see this a lot, but a very young tech could come out and look at your walk-in, and he can identify a part that's bad. And that's where he kind of stops. And he replaces that part, and then he discovers another, and so on. Now, if he walked in the door with you and said, I know part A is bad, but I want to go ahead and replace B and C and D at the same time, you're probably going to say no. All right, let's do A and then we'll figure it out. But an older tech may not even get that part of the conversation. They may come to you and say, this part right here is bad. There may be other parts behind it that are bad as well, but I'm going to start with this, but I may have to come back 2 days in a row because there's another part that's done. And the only difference in that is their explanation to you.
The communication. Yeah.
Right. Compared to the other.
That's exactly right.
And that makes a huge, huge difference.
It does. Yeah.
And I think the other part for whether it's on your side when you're setting up with a new vendor is explain, here's what we're about, and whether that's talking about your values or your what mission, whatever that is, this is what we're about. And these are the things that we don't tolerate, or what you, all the cards are on the table. And then you ask them, what's important to your company? So that both people kind of know, here's the cheat sheet, here's the rules of engagement before we ever start. So you never have to have that conversation of, you never told me.
Yeah. And then sometimes you get reined back in and say, hey, you're going down this path, and we talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to give me all options up front and tell me kind of what's going on, but now you're saying it's this. So it goes both ways. I mean, it's the guardrails, or for which you operate together, and it's also, as you said, the rules of engagement. So and that works both ways. I mean, they may come to you and say, hey, you guys didn't do what you said. You said you were going to be very proactive and you want to know everything, but then when we're telling you all of this and wanting to replace things, you guys are turning it down. Like you're not doing it. So we can't, we're not able to fulfill your needs, but it's not on us. It's not on them. It's on us.
Yeah. You have to be a partner. You have to be a partner. That's the true essence of partnership. Most of our folks that listen weekly, facility folks or people in the restaurant industry. What did you kind of learn regarding facilities from kind of when you started to today?
I learned that everybody needs a Danny, is what I learned. So I kind of, working in the restaurants, I learned real quick with our company. We were a very reactive company instead of a proactive company. And, as I was going through management training and starting to manage some of the stores, I would also get a look into our managers' daily lives. And I noticed that at several locations, especially the high volume ones, our managers ended up spending, sometimes 50-60% of their time trying to fix things or make phone calls and get people out versus managing their stores. And so one of the biggest things I learned when stepping into that facilities role, which was kind of a self-appointed role when I rolled into the office, was like, this is something we've got to work on quickly, because we pay these guys to run restaurants, not fix equipment or coordinate fixes. Was to be very, start being proactive. Because especially now that we are a more proactive company, I mean, that makes my life a lot less stressful. And when my life is a lot less stressful, that means their lives are a lot less stressful. Mm-hmm. So, most of it I learned from you when we hired you and brought you in. I also learned that you don't have to be a know-it-all, fix-it-all type person. You've got to be a great communicator and be able to manage those partnerships with the vendors that you have at a high level, and over communicate. And I've seen two different ways of people doing the maintenance departments. They either hire their own guys that know everything, or they've got a guy like you that probably doesn't do it as well as you did. That just always, Danny's line, if you don't know, is I have a guy, or I know a guy, or I'll find a guy. And you always did. So, I mean, that's kind of, we still work that way. I mean, we'll find a guy, or we know a guy, or I'll call Danny and he'll give me a guy. So,
that's very kind.
But just, we know we're in our industry, being reactive is not the way you want to go, but inevitably you've got to be reactive. You're never going to eliminate having to react to problems, especially facility problems. I mean, they're always going to be there, no matter how proactive you are. Something's going to go wrong, but you can always do whatever you can to keep it to a minimum. And ultimately, our managers are trained on managing a restaurant, the people, the processes, the procedures, not necessarily equipment. So whatever you can do to streamline that process, make it less stressful for them, and build partnerships to where those companies are also working with that manager's best interest in mind, trying to keep them up and running to where they're not having to find a workaround every day to skip this piece of equipment, or make another call on this piece of equipment. Anything you can do in that direction is really good for our business. So,
And you hear that all the time. I mean, if you had a manager per se, and let's just say they were struggling taking care of the customer in the dining room, and you ask them or you want to talk to them about improving that. If they are heavily involved in facilities, it's the first thing they're going to tell you. I can't do it because I'm spending all my time fixing the water heater or working on it. And you hear it all the time. I mean, if they're not, so you want to eliminate that piece so that you can focus with them on what their real job is. You know,
ultimately, you're paying them, and their bonuses are on the restaurant's performance. And
Sure.
if you're hindering their performance by not giving them the resources that they need to have a working restaurant and all that, I mean, then basically you're eliminating their bonus, and you don't even know it
Sure.
because they're spending all their time working on the wrong thing.
Correct.
So, and I mean, that's a lot of how we operate. I don't know how all restaurants operate, but I mean, it's tied to, how well the restaurant performs, sales,
Sure.
management of expenses, and having a highly trained, cross-trained staff. But all that stuff kind of goes out the window if you can't give them the tools to succeed. And the tools of a restaurant manager is,
Sure.
first and foremost, give them working equipment.
Mhm.
And a comfortable atmosphere. If you can't, HVAC is another one. That's if they're having to handle customer complaint after customer complaint because the dining room's hot, then you're putting them in a bad situation because they've done all they can do about that.
Mhm.
They've made the
Right.
phone call, and they're not techs. They're not going to get up there and work on a HVAC. They might, but I don't want them to.
Sure.
So. Yeah, you got to give them every opportunity to succeed and set them up for success so that they can do what you're asking them to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who's your mentors, Beau?
I always look at that one a little differently than most, I guess. I don't think any one person can be an expert in every aspect of life. So, as far as business mentors, I haven't had a ton of those, but I would say, starting at a very young age, my dad would have been a good business mentor, as far as hard work goes. I won't lift him up on a pedestal too much, but I learned hard work at a very young age working on a farm. But it wasn't always the work smarter, not harder. But that he ingrained the hard work ethic. And then Brent, my father-in-law, the founder of this company, he has to be a mentor of mine. Just for the showing confidence in me and giving me an opportunity, and then being willing to, come in here and watch me make mistakes. And one of the big things when you first get a job or you first come into a company and are expected to do a job, you're going to have a lot of ideas. And what you don't realize is a lot of those ideas have already been tried and failed, and for him to sit there and listen. And I mean, more times than not, if I came up with something, it's something that he had tried, maybe even 2 or 3 times, and it never worked, but he would sit there and listen and be like, okay, well, what if this happens? Or what, he would kind of work me through that instead of just shoot it down. Occasionally he would just shoot it down, be like, we tried it, it's not going to work. But, and just understanding what it took for him. I mean, business was his life. I mean, this company was his life. I mean, this was what he did for fun. I mean, he came in to work because it was fun for him. He was the true restaurateur. But he also had a love for people that I deeply respect. But just for him to pass all of that on to me, and then also to be able, after he had another heart attack, he basically, every time I would ask him a question, he's like, you got to run this thing like I'm not here, because tomorrow I might not be here. And that was so hard for him because this was his life, and for him not to be in control and to say the answers or to give me his opinion. I know what that took, and it's I definitely love that man with all my heart, and I miss him, but he was definitely a mentor on the business side for me. And then I would say you also, because I've not always been the best communicator, and you taught me the value of that. And watching you work with vendors, and not only our vendors, but just the restaurant managers, they had never seen somebody come in as often as you did just to check on them or see how things are going. And, I will sometimes go in and they hardly see me at that point in my life. I would go in just to get that feel. Is it going good, or do I feel tension, and then I might be gone. But the way you would go in and kind of make your rounds, talk to people, everybody got to know you really fast because of how tenacious you were with relationships and your willingness to listen. I mean, you taught me a lot about communication and just how the relationship is the business. I mean, if it's so important to be able to go in and know people's names and talk to them and figure out what's bothering them today, and does it have anything to do with something that I can I fix it? Can I make it better? And so you were a big part of that. And then I think that's on the business side, but as far as other aspects of life, I've got some coaches from a long time ago that just instilled good values in me, and then also on the spiritual side, which I'm big on that, and that's reflected in our mission and our values and our purpose statements and things like that. But I mean, I've got several people and my dad would be another one there, that it hasn't always had the easiest life or the best life, but just to be the person that he is today through the faith he has. That's a big one. And then I would say David Reynolds, another good family friend, just taught me so much about what faith can do for me and how it can ground me and really keep life from having the effect on me that it has on everybody else, because I'll have a different perspective on things. So those are probably the big ones in my life so far.
That's great. That is great. A lot of people, and it usually is more than one person, because each person that is kind of a mentor, they bring something, tangible. They don't bring it all, but they bring something very tangible. For you take a little bit here and a little here and a little here, and you mold that together, that it's something huge. And
yeah. And I actually left off one too. I left off several, but Royce Pruitt, he's our CFO here, and I could put him in both of those lists because he's a very faith-driven man. But I mean, it's probably one of the smartest guys I've ever met, and that was one of my weaker points when I came in, is just understanding the financial. I mean, I know math and I know numbers, but relating that back to a restaurant or a campground, and just working through those things and learning that you're not counting dollars anymore, you're counting pennies, because the margins are slim, and you've got to really have a handle on things and how granular you have to get to find problems. And a man that smart doesn't always have to extend the grace and mercy that he did to say, I'll teach you all you want to know. Just anytime you want to come in here, we'll work through whatever you have a question about. Somebody like that could look at me and be like, oh, if you're in that position, you should already know this stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's not been like that, and he's taught me a lot. And our CEO, Kerry, who's kind of my partner in crime, he was with my father-in-law for many years, but my father-in-law, I would say that even though Kerry had that title years ago, he never had to be that. He was more of an operations manager, because my father-in-law basically would say, we're going to do this, you got to make it happen, and that was probably really rough on Kerry, even though I know Kerry loved Brent to death. I had to understand that I didn't know everything when Brent passed. And it was basically just me and my wife, at the helm. So having Kerry here and his ability, I basically just said, look, I know what you've had to do in the past. It's not going to be like that in the future. Like, we're going to be leaning on your knowledge and expertise, and just his ability to step into that role and fill it the way he has been impressive. And just his willingness to share with me and teach me, and just this is a great group of people. I mean, this company is, there's nothing more evident than, the people make this company. I would say that people make every company, but we have wonderful people here, and it's why I look forward to coming to work every day. And I can't thank those people enough for just accepting me, even though I did not deserve the role that I was in when I first got put in it. It was just entrusted to me. But these guys have been wonderful. So
awesome. Real quick, talk about, because you work with Elise and she's owner, her and her sister, so you have two folks, but as a family, pro and con.
Oh, the pros of working with my wife, I guess, would be I get to see her a lot.
Sure.
And a con would be I get to see her a lot. No, it's mostly pros there. I enjoy working with my wife. I think, any relationship, marriage, you're probably in that relationship, and I would hope so, because you're best friends, you're very close, and you have similar values. That's the only way the marriage works. So you love each other. So I do get to see her a lot. And we both know, I think this is a pro, we both know what the other is doing or going through at all times. So I know when she's had a bad day, because typically it's probably not a great day for me too, because it's, company related. So, but I think another one of the really good things is I think every husband should get to experience that part of it, because I get to see my wife's talents and how awesome she can be in certain situations that a lot of husbands will probably never get to see. I get to see her at home, and she's the glue that holds our family together and makes all the schedules. But every husband probably gets to see that to some degree. But then I get to see how she interacts with the people here, the problem solving skills she has, and her own way of doing it, which is totally different from mine. But just how people look at her. I mean, because of who she is, and not because she's an owner, but just her heart. She's got a ginormous heart, and people just love her. Whether her answer is good, bad, it doesn't matter, because people are like, she's just lovable, and everybody does love her. And I think another piece of it is our company actually mirrors kind of who we are as people. I mean, we got entrusted with these positions, and so we have the ability to allow the company to be a part of us and a part of who we are as people. And I think in some cases that's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing for us and for our marriage. And I think it's most of the time good for the company. Sometimes we are so people focused, and so I think both of us have pretty big hearts that we may make a decision that sacrifices profits for people. And that's, I still think that can be a good thing. But it can also get you in trouble. I mean, if the economy takes a dive and you just made a big money decision that was for your people, you could be responsible for the loss of their jobs if you had to close something, or if the economy went, south that bad. But we always have common goals, both at home and at work. So, I mean, that's another good aspect. I mean, there's an endless, for me, it's an endless list of pros. And then there's definitely some cons. I mean, I do get to see my wife a lot. So, which means we always know what the other is going through. So there's no small talk at home. Like, how was your day? Because we know.
Right, sure.
So when we get home, sometimes we sit in a little more silence than other people, because there's no reason for me to question how her day was, and no reason for her to question mine most of the time. I think we do a pretty good job with this part, but I think it's also hard, and it's it's a big thing for me because I went through it as a young kid, hearing my parents talk about business and problems and things all the time, which can be a good thing. Let your kids know how real life works. But I think we do a pretty good job not bringing our work home, but that is very hard. And sometimes you got to talk about it at home because you don't want to talk about it here. It could affect, people could get nervous here about something. So we'll have to take things home occasionally, but we try not to do it in front of the kids. Our schedules can be tough, accommodating our kids' schedules because we both need to be here a lot. But I think, we definitely made a decision together that we're not going to sacrifice our family relationship for the business, which is why we've kind of assembled or kept a really good team here. And one day the day will come when, I have to be here more because Kerry's, he's not going to be here forever. He'll retire at some point, and I'll probably have to step into more of his role. So, there's just, I guess the big thing you've heard the saying, happy wife equals happy life.
Sure.
Well, I've got to keep my wife happy at home and at work.
And
so there's your con.
Full-time job.
Yeah, that's full-time.
Well, Beau, we're about
overall, I don't have any complaints about it. I would say some people might not want to work with their wife, but I enjoy it. She might not want to work with me, though. I don't know. You should ask her.
I understand. Well, we're about out of time. I wanted to say thank you for taking the time to talk a little bit about your career, the company. As we mentioned before, I had the opportunity to work with Collier and for you and Lise for a few years, and it was one of the highlights of my life. I had come from big corporate Ruby Tuesday and restaurants all over the country to, what do you mean? They're all on the same road? I got it. I'm your guy, and do that. And I truly enjoyed that. Not just the work piece, but who you and Elise both are as people. Most everybody knows my son, Coach Koontz, and you and Elise are two of the most special people in his life. And that means more than any work piece or anything like that. So what I know when you speak about faith and what you try to do in the company, I was part of that and I understood that. And I just think it's wonderful, the perspective and what you're doing, you and Elise both, and all the other folks at Collier, a great group of people. And it is truly outstanding, just truly.
Well, thank you very much. Well, Coach Koontz means a lot to us too. We love Adam. He's great, and we love your family, and we were fortunate to have you. And you taught me way more than I ever taught you. But I'm thrilled that you had a good time working here.
It was great. It absolutely was great. So anyway, Beau, thank you very much. We appreciate everybody listening. We'll be back next week with a new episode. So we'll see you next Tuesday again on FM Corner.